So the first part of this lecture, we learned about what is it that we value. The second part, we recognize that there can be more than one value in a product, and that we need to look at it from the inside and from the outside. And so the third part is, okay, well, how do I map out what people do? And this is called the value chain. And you could do a value chain for anything. It could be about marketing, technology, or whatever. But the big thing about the value chain is it's like walking through the shoes of the customer and seeing how they're looking at it from their point of view. And that's where you can find the value. And so here's a simple generic value chain, and that has to do from the inbound logistics all the way to services. And so if you're interested in a particular company and you're looking at goods and services, you go through all their processes and see, well, again, the three values. Where are they having problems in utility? Where are they having problems with cost? And where are they having problems that are just aggravation, that emotionally it just doesn't make them feel particularly good? How can I make it fun? How can I make it useful? And so here's an example of a value chain. This was before there was an internet. What if you wanted to buy a book? Well, the problem with the book is there are lots of different books, and to have them in a paper catalog is very cumbersome. And so you can't research very many books, and this is where the internet is a great solution, because you can scan through a lot of things. You have to drive to the store, but driving could be an impediment. Maybe you don't want to have to travel. Then you go to a section. The problem with having books in a retail store is it's very expensive. Square footage is very expensive. On the other hand, in warehouses, those are cheap. You look at the books they have, and typically in a bookstore, they don't have that big a selection. I mean, you only might have like 10 books on marketing, whereas online, you could have hundreds of books. And so maybe you purchase something and you go home. And so Jeff Bezos, when the internet came around, saw all these issues with books. And so he realized there's weaknesses in the value chain. And so Bezos saw all the solutions that internet can bring. And so what did the guy do? He started Amazon. But he thought beyond just selling cheap books. Ultimately, he didn't want to be just a bookstore. He realized that these kind of values can be applied to selling any products. And so in terms of value chains, what you want to do is list out the step of operations. Look at those steps and figure out where the pain points are. Think of how you can come up with a solution. And your solution, well, is it a good solution, or does it create more problems? Does it just create different problems? And that's the problem with drugs. Every drug has a side effect. Question is the side effect as bad as the original cure? And of course, do I make money? Here's an example of an alleged solution. The Mac and Cool Bowl. The idea behind the Mac and Cool Bowl, for those of you who haven't seen it before, is all it is a hollow plastic bowl. You put water in it, you freeze it, and so when you put your mac and cheese on it, it cools down right away. This is a value chain, and so they're saying the big pain point in making mac and cheese is the waiting for it to cool down. And the problem is that at $5.99 a bowl, that's kind of expensive for just a piece of plastic. Not only that, it takes up a lot of room. And so for the problem it's solving versus the headaches it causes, the Mac and Cool Bowl basically just isn't worth it. Not only that, the first time I saw it, I just said, well, people have been using convective cooling for hundreds of years, and that seems to have worked out okay. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, what I mean is this. That's right, just blow on it. But what it came down to is the Mac and Cool Bowl didn't fix a significant problem. On the other hand, there are lots of, all around you, there are lots of solutions. The pasta fork, barcodes, the open wing corkscrew. However, if the open wing corkscrew costs $500, and it really does save the problem of you messing up your corks and all when you take wine out, it makes it a lot easier. Nobody would buy one of those. Same thing with the pasta fork. And this is where you start to get into pricing. The perceived value of what you're getting economically doesn't make sense. Barcodes, you couldn't put it on everything unless it costs pennies, and that's what it does. Another example of a value chain is basketball. And so, and this actually has to do with your assignment 1. Students do this every time. It just drives me nuts. In assignment 1, you were given blocks. Use the blocks. Don't make up something different. If you have questions, ask me. But supposing I want to look at the value chain of basketball, I get possession of the ball, I move the ball to the offensive end, I pass it around, whoever's got the best shot shoots. And this is a way I get points. And so based on that, I could look at what are the parameters of each of these and look at how my team is doing and improve in that. If we don't get enough possessions, then I need to get rebounders or people who can steal the ball. There's one of two ways you can score a lot of points. Either you take a lot of shots or you take fewer shots but have higher conversion rates, good shooting percentage. And so you can look at each of those and look at, okay, how do we need to get better? In terms of how the value chain is impacted by technology and what technology implicates, what the internet did is actually remove the middleman. Instead of needing middlemen, the internet can do that. The integrated circuit creates a new value in terms of portability and scale. Wireless gives you reach. The microsensor gives you information. And internet mobile means I can contact anyone, anytime, anywhere. And so by understanding these values of technology, how can I apply it to products? An example is when they first started selling, they realized, guess what? When I sell online, I don't need a storefront anymore. And I can just sell digitally. And so by removing those middlemen, that's what they refer to as disintermediation. Every product, you could figure out where the pain points are. A refrigerator, the problem with the early refrigerators is they leaked ammonia. And so they replaced somebody developed Freon. Automation makes sense if you have repetitive tasks. If you have repetitive tasks, a machine is always going to make fewer mistakes than is a human. Now, in terms of online selling, for example, you go to a website, you shop, you purchase something, maybe I want to return it, and is there support for me? And what Bezos did is he went through the entire customer experience. And what he did is he came up with solutions because he knew any one of those were a reason why people wouldn't want to buy online. And so websites hanging up is a big reason why people don't want to buy online. And so now they fix that. Also, in terms of shopping, lots of options. In terms of purchasing, secure checkouts. Each one of the issues related with those steps Bezos addressed, and basically he gave you no reason why you shouldn't buy online. Another example is Southwest. Now if we look at Southwest, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make an airline very profitable. And revenue is not only number of passengers, but number of flights. And number of flights are how many I can squeeze in per day, but it depends on the flight time. And this was the big secret that Southwest figured out. What they figured out is that when you have a short flight, the time of the flight is dominated by how fast you can turn around the gate. And so that's why they went with seat numberless boarding. And so they cut that 1.5 hour down to a half hour, which means they could squeeze more flights in a day, make more money. The other thing Southwest realized is that a big chunk of the cost in airplanes is having to take care of like 10 different planes. So they just fixated on one plane, which really reduced the maintenance cost, which is a big part of an airline. So as you can see, Southwest, if you go through all the little details of their operation, it's all geared towards saving money. They went through the value chain. So this summarizes the things that you look at when you map out a value chain and where the opportunities exist for you. And so what we cover today is the value proposition, why we actually buy something. looking at the underlying nature of a product, because there could be more than one value, and that's what you could take advantage of selling. Those values are functional, psychological, or economic. And we found that the value chain, by mapping out what a customer does, it gives you an opportunity to find opportunity.